Wargaming Tactics 101. In this continuing series, we're exploring fundamental wargaming tactics, independent of system, style, whatever game that you're playing. There are certain core rules, core dynamics that are in effect. And if you're looking to level up your game, being mindful and looking out for these tactica is very, very important. Likewise, if you're jumping or starting to a new wargaming system, we want to cut down that learning curve immediately. So looking for these various markers will help level up your game. Okay, tactics. Have you ever considered table size to be tactics? Now, we talk about units. We talk about you go, I go. We talk about terrain. Terrain is linked to the table. Various profiles of units and spending points and building lists and deployment. Deployment is key. When does the game start? Deployment, or even before deployment, when your opponent is pulling out those models and units and you're assembling what the tactica is going to be on the table. We've explored the mission, the importance of playing the mission, while at the same time preventing your opponent from being able to play the mission. So we have all these ideas and tactics, but the physical tabletop, the tactica of that, and how depending on the size of the table, the game changes. Now, some war games, the size of the table is locked. What I mean by that is God tier, and I'm going to pull in a couple of systems just as an example, but again, this is top level. Look for your own system. God tier is an excellent skirmish game. You fight war bands over tiers of gods that give you great power. I pushed up to the archive here, playlist God tier, fantastic. There are a number of boards that you play on, and of course a number of missions, but all the boards and their hex maps are static. They're kind of standard board gaming size. You can't go anywhere else. That creates a tactica that is limited, and not in a bad way. I say limited as in physically limited to that table. It's going to determine the units that you take and how you play. Likewise, if we look at something like Battletech, the standard, and I use that loosely, are the various hex maps that we play on. What they represent is kind of a close-in snapshot of the battlefield. Some stuff is going on all around you, but you're in command of this lance, these four mechs, and that's what you're fighting over. But you can play as big or as small as you want. There's some games where we'll fill my entire dining room table with terrain. There's other games at the gaming club where it's a really busy night and we want to make sure everyone has a table to play. And literally I'm playing on half of a card table. Like we've got barely enough room for one hex map, or sometimes even one hex map, and we fold over the flap so it's like 2/3 of a hex map. We can still have the Battletech experience, but it changes dynamically. And then there are some war games, like historical war games, where you might have a huge battlefield, a massive, almost like it's two games going on. Like we were playing some Napoleonics, where I was literally commanding one side of the table, and my friend was commanding on the same side, their side of the table, and we were facilitating back and forth, trying to collaborate and defend this overpass, this bridge. But while we were working together, the sheer scope of the table was very much like, I'm doing my own battle over here, and I'm not going to mess up. You're doing your battle there, don't mess up. We'll meet in the middle and grab that tabletop glory. So I say this as an example, taking into consideration the fixed tabletop, or generally as part of your gaming club or group, the table you play on, that's going to layer over the units that you take. Okay, Fritz, examples. Let's talk about skirmish type war games. We pushed up some skirmish tactica. Generally, a skirmish war game involves a smaller amount of models, and it represents like a snapshot, real like squad level warband, 5, 6, 8, 10 miniatures taking part on this point in time. And the understanding is absolutely all around is a bigger battle, but we're like zooming into this moment. Games like a skirmish game that might play on a very small table, generally speaking, mechanics that favor close-in assault are slightly better than shooting. And shooting attacks that are generalized as opposed to sniping attacks are more favored. In a skirmish game, The map is generally so small, if you have a sniper up in a tower or a support weapon, right, machine gun ready to go, it's easy to hide from it. It's easy to maneuver around it. It's easy not to be spotted by it. So sometimes what you see with machine guns or snipers, again, layer it over for your Tactica, you're like, all right, I got up there to the tower. It's fantastic. It looks amazing. But like nothing's happening. Likewise, units that want to favor shooting on a small map, you can use terrain to kind of hide, move, and then suddenly spring in and attack. So generally speaking, closer shooting, close-in attacks tend to be favored, or easier to pull off, I should say, in a skirmish game. Now let's go really, really long, right? Let's look at like kind of a big war game, say filling up my dining room table with terrain to play Battletech. Artillery, long range, weapons, thumpers, long toms, things like this. These are artillery pieces in Battletech. Are just going to brutalize. They're just going to terrorize. They're going to be able to be on one side of the table and just lob over every single turn. How are you going to stop that? Now, maybe you have your own artillery. If not, you got to get over there, and that's going to take time. Even if we say just an exercise like, look, take a lance, a 4 mechs, right? Say a medium, a light, 2 mediums, and a heavy. Park that all the way over on one side of my dining room table. I'm going to park my artillery on the other side of the table. Make it to the other side. No other units, just you moving, navigating through the city and the terrain. How long is it going to take to get into firing range where you can shoot on my artillery? 4, 5, 6 turns of movement? Those are 4, 5, 6 turns of free shots, unless you have something fast like artillery that can get there, or air support, or hovers. Obviously, there's counters. But what I'm illustrating is physically based on the design of the table, the physical limitations of the table, whether it's a set standard or kind of open, or what you regularly play at your club. That influences the units. That influences the Tactica, and that's something you want to be aware of and layer over your 101 tactics.